So I just want to welcome you, Christopher Stout.
Hey.
Thank you so much for
Hi.
coming. Yeah, how do we know each other? How do we know each
How
other?
don't we know each other?
Well.
No, it's totally professional. I mean it that way. How do we know each other? Once upon a time in a faraway place called Miami, I was doing an art fair. It was my first Basel experience, and there was this incredibly professional, entrepreneurial, go-getting person in a pencil skirt in the hall across from me. And I was like, oh, I want to know all my neighbors and whatever, and we ended up being besties. But that's how we originally met with each other, and since then we've both been in several art fairs together at the same time, both in New York with your organization, with my organization.
I remember you running across the hallway because you were there not with your organization, just you.
Yeah, it was just me.
Yeah. Hello.
It was me. It was a solo show.
I had met you. I was so busy. I was like, oh, we have nice neighbors. That's great. I gotta go. I was
Right.
so harried. It was my first exposure.
We had 2 rooms of installation.
Oh my God. It was nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember you just came into the room and you were like, I just sold a piece. I need to hug someone. Who can I hug? I'm here all by myself. And I was like, oh,
That sounds exactly right. That sounds exactly right.
That's my first memory of you.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much for coming and doing this because
And we were both there the entire fair from open to close, and I was like, I like this girl. She works like I do.
That's true.
She's here to work.
Oh, that Germanic work ethic.
Yeah, exactly. She'll do a happy hour if she needs to, but at the end of the day, she's just here to work.
Yes, I was totally there to work, and work we totally did.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, I think that they've gotten easier because we know the system now. We know how to get through it. But
Oh, absolutely.
the first endurance run, you're like, are we off across the finish line yet or what?
Where is it?
Yeah, where now I'm like, oh no, the finish line's way out there.
Are we at mile 14, 16, 21? Yeah.
Yeah, so you said your organization. So you came the first year that we met just as you individual
Myself.
artist.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as we both have kind of done, we've built organizations sort of around our artistic passions. So
Sure.
tell me a little bit about your organization.
I run a think tank, a nonprofit think tank that's based in Bushwick. The name of it is Bushwick Art Crit Group. It started very small and organically as an artist lecture group where people would come in and they would pre-share slides. We put them on the projector and it's timed and they have 9 minutes and they talk about their work and people can ask questions. It was a direct lift from another group that I used to participate in the Lower East Side, and I wrote to them and I was like, this is so cool and no one's doing it in my neighborhood, can I have it? And they were like, yeah, please, like pass it on. We borrowed it from someone else and this is like the lineage of New York. So suddenly I felt really like special. But that lecture group grew into other adjunct things. So organically it grew into a visual arts program that includes fairs. Organically, it grew into something that we call Artist Book Fair, which is we get a bunch of artists and they bring their books, and sometimes we do it in correlation with the lectures, sometimes we do it at other places. It grew into our video library, which is very short films on our YouTube channel of artists in their studios talking about their work so people can see exactly what the artist studio experience is like in the city. And it also grew into a series of panel discussions, and we're working on our second tools for women in the arts crit right now, which is happening this fall.
Awesome.
So all these things have sort of gone, and I forget, we're opening, we're becoming a gallery, a project space. So that's happening as well, and we launch October 2nd.
And where is that going to be?
It's on Meserole.
Okay.
So in the same loft as Art Helix. So there's several galleries that are all opening at the same time.
In the Bushwick
yes, in Bushwick.
of Brooklyn. Awesome.
Everything we do is nexus in Bushwick, except if we go to Miami or go into the city for a fair. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and the crazy thing is we're less than 3 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, you have been busy. Now, I mean, why did you pick Bushwick? Why? Is it just because that's where you happen to be, or is this kind of built out of a bigger conviction?
I think it had everything to do with energy and maybe just a side dish of convenience. So my studio is in Bushwick, so I knew a lot of people here, but Bushwick has that sort of reputation for that sort of DIY entrepreneurial spirit. And it has a reputation of people who all work hard and who want to help. So the big not-for-profit that everyone knows here is Arts in Bushwick, and it's all volunteer-based. So people are automatically comfortable with like, hey, I want to help you do this. So, you know, we do pay the people that work for us. It's not volunteer in the way that Arts in Bushwick is. But that being said, people were just like, oh gosh, how can we help? How can we get involved? How can we, you know, like finding, it's also a big hub in New York of artist spaces. So if we were looking for people to come speak about their art, they were all right there, plenteous. So it was like really, that was easy.
Right.
Yeah.
It is definitely a really saturated, I've never lived in a neighborhood so saturated with artists. So yeah, the time I spend out here is definitely art intense, which I love.
Yes.
I couldn't have gotten a cooler.
We're the majority, man.
Yeah, we are the majority. It's so weird. Well, cool. Let's see. So how did you I know that you moved here several years ago. You had an art career before you were in New York, so you're not just a New York-based artist. You sort of were. You were in San Francisco.
I was in San Francisco for 9 years before I moved to New York.
Making art.
Yes.
Okay.
And running a gallery and staff writing at a magazine and all kinds of different things in the art there. So I cut my teeth in sort of the business side of things in art, and I figured out philosophically or viscerally or stylistically, like however you want to say it, like what my own personal work looked like in San Francisco. San Francisco is like this wonderful entrepreneurial incubator kind of town.
Totally.
So whether you are in tech or startup or internet or art or all kinds of things, like it's just one of the places that's like, okay, I need to figure this out and grow up. Like it's a great place to do it. And then, you know, for me, my choice, and I love this choice, was like, okay, I figured it out. Now I'm going to go to New York, which is certainly understood as one of the art nexuses of the world. People can fight about whether it's first place or second place or whatever, and that's a whole different thing. But I was like, okay, I've learned it here. I made a lot of interesting mistakes, and now I'm going to take it to New York and apply all this knowledge.
Right. That's great. So, and you've been here for now 8 years, right?
2007, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I'm in year 9 here.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's the
exactly
exact balance.
Yeah.
Cool. So you were saying that when you got here, there was a traction issue. I mean, not really an issue, but it took a while to really get your footing. I mean, you were here, 5 years before you started Bushwick Art Crit Group, and
right.
I think you just had your first solo show, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So what was that process like? I mean, how did that the networking, the connecting, the kind of getting into the mix enough to eventually end up in the right place to have a solo show in New York? How'd that work for you?
It's kind of funny now that I've had a solo,
okay.
But you know, in California in 9 years, I don't want to remember more than it was, but 8 solos, maybe more. I'm like trying to remember, and that's kind of crazy when you're like, how many solos did I have? But I mean, it was prolific, and you know, I got here and I felt really haughty. You know, I'm like, I was the visual program director in the city's largest not-for-profit, and I was the lead staffer at a magazine, and, you know, like I blah, 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 and all these publications, like I'm somebody. And so you like march down the main street of Chelsea or whatever, and you're just like, I'm here, you're welcome. And people are like, we don't care. We've never heard of you. We've never heard of San Francisco. We don't, like, get out. And that was literally how it felt. And it was literally that exact, like, you're welcome, get out, you know, and that was, you know, and when I moved here, it was people were talking about like the bubbles here and it's about to pop, the bubbles here and it's about to pop, and like, I felt like dealers were so frantic, like sell all you can because we don't know when it's going to end. And then, you know, like the market crashed and the financial, and I mean, we went into that sort of financial winter. So that was the backdrop from when, you know, like my personal journey of moving here, but like the big like art market world of doing here. And so there was like 2 years that I didn't, you know, I just had to figure out where I belonged and who I belonged with. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there was a lot of, you know, what I'll call as unhappy accidents. So I was represented by a gallery for a long time, and, you know, I was in several group shows there, and we were making really good headway, and, you know, we were working towards a solo, and that gallery is no longer in existence anymore, but it was that sort of like heart-wrenching. And then, you know, people and artists in New York, when their galleries close, they literally feel like they have the mark of the beast on their forehead, because people are like, oh, well, where have you been working? And you're like, I was showing at such and such. And they're like, oh, you know, and you, you know, and they're like, gallery closed. This must be the artist's fault, because if they'd sold more, then they'd still be open. We hate you, you know. No. Please don't poison us with your virus, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah, we don't really need that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, oh God, it's contagious. So, you know, there was that whole thing. And then
like Art World leprosy or something.
Totally. And then I you know, I just started doing, I actually decided, like, very deliberately, like, I'm going to take my career over the pond, and the pond being the East River, and I'm going to not focus on Chelsea so much anymore. I'm not going to focus on the Lower East Side so much anymore. And, you know, it was at the same time I was, you know, like, I had just opened my studio in Bushwick, because that's where, like, the people were, and the vibe felt so good. I was like, I think I'm just going to show here for a while and just do stuff. And I have to say, frankly, that opening, just all of the energy and the muscle and finance and everything that was required to open Bushwick Art Crit Group kind of diverted my, like, focus away from the whole solo thing and making work. And there was that sort of, like, war about, you know, like, so much time in the day, and am I going to work on this film library? Am I going to work on this lecture series? Am I going to work on this art making? Am I going to work on, you know, all these things? So it wasn't like, I mean, that the happy thing was when I felt convicted, like, it's time. And that was determined by, this work is in my studio, and it's like 9.5 months pregnant, and it's banging to get out of my studio and be seen. You know, like, I actually was pretty fortuitous. I mean, like, fortuitous in finding the right space, and we just did it. Yeah, I mean, I think the change of moving to New York, like, I had to figure out what the work was going to be.
Yeah, definitely.
This city radically changes the work that comes out of your fingers.
It really does.
So that was going on as well.
Well, it's just this, it's like drinking from a fire hydrant or something, a fire hose. It's just, there's so much information. You know, I almost have to be very selective when I go out, where I go, and what shows I see, because I know it's going to affect me, and there's so much information to process. Right. I can't process it all and keep my voice, so I end up being very selective with what I even let in, which maybe that's not the best approach. But.
The funny thing is, I might actually have another solo this year in the city.
No way.
That I'm almost able to like put proper nouns to it, almost. But it's just, but going from that whole nuclear winter.
Yeah.
You know, like, again, like a different sort of mark. I had lots of marks on my forehead. The mark of the person whose gallery's closed, and the mark of person that's lived in New York for several years and not had solo, and then the mark of, you know, and then there were other marks too. You know, the mark of a not-for-profit owner, and the mark of, you know, like all this stuff. Like, I'm not trying to be, I'm not a martyr. No one's ever been like, you're a martyr. No one's ever said that. But, you know, so, you know, like, there's that sort of pendulum.
Yeah. Definitely. And I found that there's often a direct correlation, you know, and I can't tell which way is the causation goes, but between how much time and money I can invest in my art practice, or, you know, and how much credit card debt I have from having done that, you know, and therefore, like, where my attention goes otherwise. It's just, it always is a back and forth.
I think we're supposed to be teaching people something, so I'll throw this out.
That's just a life motto, I think.
Right,
basically.
I know, but I'm just...
We should always be teaching something.
I'm about to get tactical. So when you have a solo in New York, it's really important that you write everyone that you ever thought about working with and say to them, I have a solo at such and such gallery, and I really believe in the work, and I really believe that you should come in the gallery and see it. And that's how you get to leap from going, because there's nothing like having a really viable, amazing, interesting project to propel you right into your next amazing, viable, interesting project.
That's awesome. That is a wonderful tip. Thank you so much. Yeah, you've definitely got to, I mean, the art of self-promotion is there, but also just this relationship building where you say, I have something now, I want to show you. You've got to be here. Come.
And I believe in it.
And I believe in it.
I believe in it.
Yeah. That's huge. You know, between Bushwick Art Crit Group and trying to fund all of it and things like that, do you have any tips around how to keep those things sustainable? I mean, I know that time management's a huge part of it, and we've talked about that and personally in so many ways. But aside from the time management, you know, how did you put it together to be able to bring all these artists to, say, the book fair or whatever? I know there's been a couple of Kickstarters and fundraising.
One.
Just one?
Yeah.
Oh,
the only time we've ever raised money specifically was to go to Miami last year.
And how did it work?
It was tricky. It was really tricky. It's hard to convince people. I mean, Miami has a reputation of being such a big party. And so, like coaching people that even though you're going to a party, that you're going there to work is sometimes not necessarily in people's mindset. And, at the end of the day, we got it done. But I am always very careful about couching and sort of like sharing the balance between two important things. And the first thing is, in New York, it's probably going to be a lot harder than you've possibly even anticipated. And two, it's totally worth it. And you literally have to remind yourself both things. Unless you're the kind of person that doesn't need to know it's hard because you'll get psyched out. And you just have to be like, I'm going to jump off that cliff, man. Like, wear a parachute. But, but those are the two things. And Miami was certainly no exception to that rule. It was way harder than we thought.
Yeah.
And it was totally worth it.
Yeah, it really was.
And it really hurt. And then it catapulted us. Some of the most interesting press that we got that year was from that show, and some of the most interesting people that we're working with now was from that show, and people that are excited about the things we're doing in the gallery. Like, all those kinds of things were facilitated through that experience. We met some great people. But yes, it was hard.
It was hard. Yeah, and I mean, really going there, yes, it's a big party, but sometimes these big art fairs, it's just about being in that place at the right time. Or
sure.
You're not necessarily selling a damn thing, or you're not selling very much, but you are really building an amazing mailing list. You're building this like incredible credibility, and there's a place for, again, like, come see what I believe in. This is where we're located. This is where we are. And in the middle of all this activity, you will find me.
Right.
I think that's a really big part of it, that sometimes people, they don't realize, when you think about another career, say someone's going to become, a lawyer or a doctor, there's this, take out these loans, there's go to this thing, go, and then you apply for these jobs. There's these concrete benchmarks that you get. And I think it's easy from the outside or early on in the process of an art career to be like, oh, the benchmark is I sell out all my stuff.
Right.
It's like, well, sure, price it all at $1. You
sure.
want to? You just sold it all. There you go. There's like the art of being in the arts.
Right.
There's not a concrete benchmark. So there's my little, I don't know. That's what I always...
I'm pushing back a little bit because I feel like if I say that, you'll be like, yeah, I totally mean this too, because we're both kind of cut from the same cloth. You're right that if I wanted to be like a consultant at Deloitte, and I'd go to business school and I'd get an MBA, and then I'd go there and they'd negotiate a salary and they'd get me a mentor, and the mentor's job would be to do whatever, and like that's totally point written and point given, all that stuff. There is this sort of hysteria or paranoia in the arts that the opposite's true. And it is to a certain extent, but the thing that I like to empower people is the more that you force yourself and challenge yourself to make it more, as much as possible, like the Deloitte model or the actual career model.
Yeah.
So I have a budget, and I have a forecast, and I have a planning, and those are all traditional business financial tools that anyone uses in any other industry. So of course why wouldn't you utilize them in our industry? And where it may get a little convoluted for me, comparison to just a traditional, performance artist or visual artist, is that I run a not-for-profit. So all kinds of projects are engineered to not be profitable and to not make money. We do all kinds of things that we don't charge people for, and that's our mission statement, and that's why we, and that's all well and good. That being said, there are all kinds of all the other projects, we do the same sort of modeling, forecasting, outreach, customer profiling, generation, sales asking, and all the things that anybody in any traditional retail space would be, and the goal is to be wildly profitable.
Right.
And so the difference between, and I mean this very humbly, there are people who I considered my peers how many ever years ago in the art world that are no longer making art and are working maybe in traditional corporate America or working in agencies or like doing whatever, and are like, oh, and are sad that they're not in the art world, but like went into traditional corporate America to make it. And I think, quite frankly, the only difference between those people and me, you know, who was more talented isn't necessarily the thing. Who was, you know, all those other, you know, like in the right place at the right time, you know, like you're not in the right place at the right time. You put yourself in the right place at the right time. But I think fundamentally what the big difference might be is that I was willing to really think that, like, on some levels, like my artistic career for me is not any different than Saks or Tiffany's or The Gap or Starbucks or whatever. And whenever I work in a project, and sometimes I am so wrong, but at least I make the thing, and I'm like, this is what my studio rent's going to cost me. This is what my materials are going to cost me. This is what marketing might cost me. This is what online banner advertising might cost me. This is what all these things, you know, like the gallery might take 50%. And depending on the project, I'm just throwing out buckets. They all, obviously, if there's a gallery involved, some of those things don't, you know, pertain. But, you know, and I literally cost out every single thing. And then I, you know, like project like how much money I need to make based on everything else my own, like paying my own rent and doing whatever, you know. And then when I was first started out, I literally made a profile of everyone who had ever bought, whether it was my mom or a friend or a stranger or whatever. And I went like thinking about like, what do these people all have in common? You know,
your ideal customer avatar.
Exactly. So who is it that actually gets excited by my work enough to like whip out a card
and buy it?
And then, you know, like I started making, and then I was like, well, where does that person live? Where does that person work? Where does that? And
where else can I find them?
Exactly. So instead of having one person, how can I find 10 of these people, kinds of things? And, you know, like I treat my art. So when I'm in my studio, that's one mindset, that's one philosophical conscience, that's one set of ethics, that's one whatever. And when I'm out of that, you know, like I like put away my art apron and I put on my like business toolkit, and I think about like, you know, like who is my customer and where do they live, you know. And I'm not being, you know, like sometimes my customer may be a museum, sometimes my customer may be, you know, a corporate institution. Sometimes my customer may be, you know, like someone who responded, you know, there's all the different customer profiles. But that's, in a nutshell, why I'm successful, because to the degree that I am is that like I really, you know, and I'm fearless. You
are definitely fearless.
Yes.
I will absolutely attest to that. I mean, it takes one to know one. When I see you just like hustling out there, I know you are 100% in it, and it's just come hell or high water. There's nothing that's going to stop you, period.
Well, that's humbling to hear, and right back at you.
And there's our little love fest.
Well, we're both the kind of person that would be like, you know, like I pour through, you know, like Art Review and
God.
Art Inform and every single thing.
Yeah.
And the artist in me gets the pleasure of reading the people that are showing and what they're showing and totally feeds off the work. And then there's the business side of me that's
how did that look? Is this an effective ad? Why is it placed here? How can I get one of those? How
well,
much
mine's
does this
like
cost?
who bought what?
Who bought what?
And, you know, it's the whole like
where are the
oh my
acquisitions
gosh,
happening?
Exactly. You know, like this person purchased this, and like from an aesthetic or a philosophical or, you know, construct of work or whatever comparative, and I just look them up. I do.
Yeah.
And I use white pages on the internet, and I use all kinds of things, and I find them the best they can, and I just send them handwritten notes, and I call them.
That is brilliant.
And
you are like full of awesome information that artists need to know.
And I'm just like, congratulations on, you know, the exceptional choice. Like, this work means so much to me, and I'm going to also admit it means a lot to me narcissistic, because I find this person enriching in my own career, and they germinate, and I find that our work dialogues so well. And, you know, if this is the kind of thing that you're interested in, would you please, you know, and if you're interested, come visit my studio. You know, like
we show that's going to be here at this time.
No. Come see my studio and let's talk. We obviously have the same sort of like mental preoccupations with the art that motivates us, and so maybe you'd like to come and see it and see my work, and we can talk about things and see if we really do have the same mindset. And that's how things happen. And it's a very slow, like, no one has ever been like, oh, you just saved my life with this email, like, you know, like, here's $1 million. Like, that's never happened, but you just keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it, and you do it to the same people. You know, like I spend so much money at the end of the year on holidays because I do holiday cards, and they're non-denominational. Except I sometimes probably use Hanukkah stamps on you know, like I just want it to feel so like welcoming to everybody, and you know, like I try to get all the addresses of people and I just mail them kind of stuff and just so I'm on their minds.
Yeah. Yeah. Just keeping that connection, or trying to create that connection and foster it.
Right.
That's incredible.
But that's the difference. I think that, you know, like anybody is like, what's an artist in New York? And they think that, you know, like you and I are, you know, like in a gray out at 3 a.m.
We're just
in
busy
Bushwick.
smoking opium. You know, like,
Totally.
Yeah.
You know, and then painting something and not remembering it the next day. But the truth is that we're like reading art review and like really getting into and managing our professionalism. And at the same time, managing the little child inside of us that makes art and making sure that it gets rest and nurtured.
Yeah.
And time.
Yeah. Right.
And materials.
And fed. And just a little bit of feeding.
Yes.
Feeding and care.
Exactly.
So I guess like this, you might have already answered this, but I just have 2 questions I ask everyone. And
Cool.
One is, when I say the word successful, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Like, what do you think of as successful for you? What's that definition?
Well, that's where I'm not going to recant anything I've said, but what I've said to me doesn't determine success. Laurie Ellison, who is an artist who lives in the Lower East Side, or Paul Pocht, or I could just like go on and on. When people like that come to my studio via Open Studios or whatever, and you know, like I get to talk about my work with them, and they look at me. So people who I have respect for come and look at my work, and we have that sort of like chemistry and kismet and sort of mutual understanding. You know, like Lori wrote to me and she was like, you know, I totally related to and was touched by your work. That's success. So, you know, selling things keeps the lights on, but the relationships I have as a human being with other human beings that make the work that I love and need, that to me is success.
That's an awesome response to that question. I like that answer a lot. But of course, you know me, like I'm a relationships person. Okay, so the other one is
my heroes like me.
I just like people that like me.
No, my heroes.
Oh, your hero. That's right.
Yeah, my heroes.
Yeah, that is actually a lot about success for me too.
Yeah.
I respect you and you like me back. That's awesome. I've arrived in your heart, and now I've arrived.
Yes.
So the other question, the last one, is early bird or night owl. I think there's a lot of people have these ideas about creativity, and they assume all this stuff.
Yes.
So what is it?
Yes.
Both.
Yes.
All
of it. I like to get up at 5:30 in the morning and just like my brain, I'm a morning person. The person I'm dating with right now is like, can you stop being so alive in the morning? And I'm like, no. The sun got up. It's amazing. Let's do it. I don't mean it. Sorry, that was for. But you know, like I love morning. Yeah. I like jogging in the morning before the sun's out. And then at 10:30, at night, my third eye opens and it's just like you know. So I need to sleep generally from 2 in the morning to like 6. I mean, from 1 in the morning to 5 or something like that. And then everything from noon to 5 is a shit show, you know, and I might have meetings, I might have this, I might whatever, and I'm doing whatever, but like I'm not happy to be alive in the afternoon generally. I'm not making art in the afternoon.
Wow. So you're an early morning and this late night person. That's funny.
And web design kind of stuff, like designing for the site or doing like any kind of stuff, like like a San Francisco geek, if anyone's like, I like coding, I'm like, hi, I'm your new best friend. But you know, that kind of stuff is like in the morning is when I'm on.
Yeah, I have the same.
And
left brain works in the morning, right brain works at night.
If like work, like my hands are getting grimy, that's probably 11 o'clock at night.
Yep, I'm with you on that. Well, I think that's all of my questions. Do you have anything else you want to, add or anything, any last tidbits of Christopher Stoutness need to be shared with the world?
I don't think so. I'm glad we're collaborating.
I know, I am too. That's going to be an amazing collaboration.
I think this is going to be the first time that like every time we've ever liaised or interacted together, it's been us facilitating other people.
I know.
So I'm really excited to be like, screw those people.
It's about us.
It's about us.
Now.
You sit down and watch. It's going to be really cool.
Yeah, so...
And I love you, and I'm just going to end it by saying I'm so glad we're in the same world.
Oh my God, we overlapped. Like, people get born and they die all the time, but we totally got years to overlap. This is awesome.
Cool.
Thank you so much for letting me interview you and coming in all the way over to my place to let me just record you talking about your awesomeness that you're doing. There's always new stuff that comes out of you. I love it.
Anytime. Bye, friend.
Bye.